Good morning. I missed you last week. So, the beginning of the congregational year is always a bit frustrating for me. I've spent all summer reading and prepping, and I'm full of things to talk about and ready to get to work, but the beginning of the year has shape that demands attention. For a non-liturgical tradition, we have a lot of hoops we jump through. We're not as non-liturgical as we like to call ourselves. And additionally, this year, with our ingathering and our new building, we've had moment after moment to be celebrated, which is never a bad thing. And so all those readings are left to roil, and they probably roil a bit more than usual this year because after my illness in the spring, my brain just wasn't absorbing information quite as quickly as it sometimes does. And for some reason, I usually read sequentially, and for some reason this summer I was reading bits from a lot of books at once, so whatever comes out throughout the year will be interesting because is it about what? We don't know. But at last I thought, this will be the week. And then Hope said, oh, this is down as a pagan celebration. Are we doing Halloween? And I thought, no. But then I thought, well, there's no reason not to call the directions. They were pretty simple. You did a great job. I was very proud of you. It's a lovely and a familiar thing for me. We actually could do it more often than once a year. There are actually 8 opportunities through the year to sing those. So we did, and then because you can't call them in without releasing them, we'll do that at the very least. And much of the reading I did this summer has been about issues. In this mixed up day and age, there are a lot of them. Many of them are complicated and tragic. And we are nearly overcome by the weight of them. What thread in this tangle that is our present day life do we pull? And how do we, as people who believe in the worth and dignity of every human being, make the right choices? Are there right choices? Are there wrong choices? And add to this mix the fact that we're considering what it means to be welcoming. As Barb reminded us today, it's great to talk about being welcoming. How do we move beyond this? And I think I've said before that Sarah and I have been just stunned by the implications that being a welcoming congregation raised. Some are easily fixable. If our congregation is going to continue to age, and I hope we are, really, don't stop, and many of us seem intent on doing just that, a few of us will slowly become harder of hearing, which means we should probably have some headsets on hand. We talked about hymnals in the board meeting, and someone wondered, well, what about people with visual disabilities? Are we going to welcome them? Do we have Braille hymnals? Not only do we not have Braille hymnals, the UUA doesn't have Braille hymnals. What's up with that? How do you welcome people then? How do you choose whom you'll welcome? How do we make sense of our limitations, of our ability to be welcoming? Yikes. And in the midst of this, life goes on with its ups and downs. Many people I meet are dispirited, and some are flat out paralyzed. And they are not wrong to be so. Crazy stuff is happening in our world. It often seems that the political world has completely interrupted our ability to be good neighbors. When you watch what people write on social media, people seem to have lost their governors for vitriol and spite. And our kids are also in the midst of it. We've now added political persuasion to things kids are bullied about. Some poor kid in this country just got kicked out of a Cub Scout troop for asking a legislator probing questions about sensible gun use. If you can't handle questions from an 8-year-old, you're probably not in the right office. And we know they're pointed. They're always asking those questions, but that's their job. And if they're UUs, that's how we've raised them. If there are any things religious communities ought to provide their communities, their members, surely respite has to be prime among them. Otherwise, things like reflection, courage, and inspiration don't have fertile, giving ground in which to be planted. So in the midst of mulling about all this, I remembered a book I bought this summer that was lying partially read in my stack. Although I read the blurbs and the reviews, and they were good, I think I bought this book for its title, The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible, Sacred Activism. The book's by Charles Eisenstein, and it's so hopeful, but I think not unrealistic. He argues that if we move from a model of hate, scarcity, and separation to a concept of interrelatedness, abundance, and miracle, we can change the way we're in relationship with one another and with our world. Now, before you roll your eyes, as I do when I read a sentence like that, he's not talking about everyone sitting around and singing, "Everyone is beautiful," because we all think that, right? While the world falls apart around us, or as in too much modern theology, while we make a pot of money in completely unethical ways. Rather, he's talking about the practice of profound gratitude and awareness. It's really quite a wonderful book, and one I will return to all year as I realize I need to be reminded of life's overwhelming sweetness. So there I was the other day, thinking about this, thinking about the book, thinking about today, that maybe one of the things we need to do to become welcoming as just sort of preparation is to deepen our sense of being a community that enjoys one another's company, that laughs together, that plays together. It's not that we stop doing any of the hard work we have to do. It's just that we build some cozy into some of our interactions. Oddly, this is one of the reasons that when I preach, I use a fairly standard liturgy. What gets said in those pieces may change, but the rhythm becomes internalized. Except for anthem. We threw that one in on you today. But one of the most, and for me, one of the most meaningful pieces of the sermon the service is pastoral prayer. I like to know that in those short moments, we are all reflecting on the world together. For me, it's a powerful moment of not being alone in my concerns or joys. It's not the words. I'm sure I often get them wrong. It's the silences. There we are, connected. And certainly it's just as sweet when the high school kids show up to be reindeer in the midwinter play, or when our kids get up to sign Spirit of Life. We can rest secure knowing that the children will sign that long after any of us are here to teach them, because they will teach one another. It gets to be a point of passage that you get to stand up with the big guys and sing. Was this Callie's first time? This was Callie's first time, and she knew it. She was signing. So history keeps building, providing its comfort, and we give thanks. I find it problematic, and I've had these discussions with Dee, that we Unitarian Universalists, or even just UUCSVers, don't have a holiday with festal foods for which we give gracious thanks. I learned when I was in Sweden how reassuring it was to live in a community where everyone baked the same cookies and made the same holiday candy, although your mamas were always best, except for that one Mrs. in the village who made the Christmas cookies. But I continue to cast a speculative eye on a Thanksgiving placed in October, when the foods are really gathered in and stored as opposed to November's. I mean, really, have you ever seen pictures of the pilgrims out there bundled up in blankets? You know, like, which they would have been if they'd been eating outside under the trees, bare of leaves. But it's why I ask for Thanksgiving foods for next week's feast. Our first, but not, I hope, our last. And I can't tell you how important it feels that we're inviting our neighbors, especially the neighbors who have extended their hospitality to us. And I'm so grateful to those of you who do cook and make that possible. It's not my strong suit. We know that. But there's something about being a congregation that savors, that would draw people to us in the first place and back to us over the years. How many little churches around here make pierogi or peanut butter eggs? The taste of my childhood church was Fred Berger's 2 peppery scalloped potatoes. He bequeathed that recipe to the church when he died, and there is not a church dinner that doesn't happen without those scalloped potatoes. Few dinners should happen without those scalloped potatoes. But whether food and its preparation happens as a fundraiser, as it will today, or as a meal, building memories in hands and in our mouths deepens our connections. Those deepened connections make it easier to respond to the work that has to be done. The more we do together, the more we'll know one another's strengths. It's funny, now that makes me think of Callie again, because the other day she was busy singing "The More We Are Together." Maybe we need to find words that go, the more we do together, right? The more justice something will be, seeking will be, or something. But if some of our work is simply about building those connections, then we become better neighbors. Let's invite people we don't ordinarily break bread with or vote with. We're all neighbors. What's going on in this world as we separate is crazy, and it's damaging. How can we talk about excising racism when we're pulling the self-righteous fervor of political splits towards our breast as firmly as we can? We may want to be the house of worship where people come to hang out, to listen to music, to enjoy ourselves. We won't hide who we are and what we believe or what we do, but folks will just have to deal with the fact that we also deeply and committedly believe in hospitality. And they do deal with it. Every year at the yard sale, some people come just to eat. If religious differences won't keep them out of our appliance room, why should it keep them out from lounging around listening to music? I don't know. Is this crazy? Is it too simplistic? So what I started thinking was, wow, maybe as part of our church building, we need to learn to play together. All sorts of play. We've all certainly enjoyed the casinos. People come and you see people, watching their cards and trying to peer over their neighbor's shoulder, which is not good sportsmanship, I have to tell you now. We're not supposed to do that. Right. But we've had game days, and certainly a playground has come up again and again as something we want. But maybe we need to make that part of the church mission. I had a couple interesting conversations about a playground with people not from this congregation as I was thinking about today's sermon, and pretty much the universal response was, could it be a playground for adults too? Well, I don't know. Could there be swings? Well, maybe. Do you have any spare change? I asked. What? I said, this is going to be the playground built on spare change. So we might look for a once a monthly spare change offering, which you can make to our oh so special buckets. New logo, a playground built on change. This is a sound we want to hear. If we start to fill this up, maybe we will need that trough. Although, Scott, I've had this conversation with Scott, and Scott's gone, it'll be heavy. And I'm going like, I know somebody, and I'm looking at you, Hutch, right? Who could build me wheels for that? We could have our trough. And then I said, wow, wouldn't it be a great party? Everybody's sitting at tables, and we take buckets of money around, and we dump them on the tables, and everybody sorts them out and rolls them up. And Scott went, and I said, fine, you don't have to come. You don't have to come. And so the first vehicle we buy for the church can be an armored car, we'll teach kids to use, right, where are you, Ned? You can teach kids to use your wheelie thing so that we can get those things out to the cars and into the banks. Won't they love us when all of the change in the neighborhood is taken out of circulation? But Janine Welker designed our logo, and I spent an evening wrapping coins with the Samuels Exner crew. We laughed a lot. We got to know some things about each other and wrapped up about $150. So, and it took maybe, 45 minutes? So if we had a lot of tables and a lot of, a couple of 3 hours and a full tub of money, who knows how much money would be in there. So save your change. Invite other people to save their change. It's all the connections that we have that make communities work. There's a reading I often do at memorials that ends, "All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us." And as with so many liturgical writings, go back and look, if you grew up Christian, at any of the creeds. All they ever talk about is Jesus' death. They never talk about his life, unless they say he was born, he was died, he was buried, or he was born, he died, and was crucified, or he was crucified, died, and buried. And it's like, wait, Jesus, we remember Jesus. He did a whole bunch of good things. No, that's not in the creeds. But, and so here we have another reading that says, oh, we need ourselves, especially when it's time to die. But we need each other. We need to be together on the momentous occasions and in the mundane occurrences. We need our friends to react to the joyous times, and we need them for the silly things we laugh about and love about one another, that things that make life so sweet, and when it finally does come to an end, so poignant for that loss. That those are the things that we take up from our friends who always did this, and now we can carry those things on in their names. All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us, and maybe we need to be playing with one another and teaching one another to play. I don't know about the rest of you. I mean, I really deliberately went to the Rocky Horror Show because I thought, okay, this is really not going to be my cup of tea. First place, it's hilarious, but and Susan Sarandon was so young, which means I was young. Gosh, but I needed to sit in a place with people who laugh. Right now, our world is overwhelming, and we need to be, and we're busy. We're busy about things, and I certainly am busy about things that have meaning and matter, and it makes Jill a dull girl, and gone too soon. It's the fun. Let's spread this out. The world needs our passion and our clarity for justice. There is no doubt about that. It needs our ongoing search for and discovery of truths, and we need that too. We need to keep growing and stretching. But it also needs our comfort and joy in one another. We can be very different leaders in this community if we start by being good and welcoming neighbors. Who knows what magic or what healing can be accomplished with a couple of swing sets set high enough that adults can sit on them and talk, or swing at them and kick their heels up to the sky. When was the last time we did that? Who knows what more we might offer ourselves and one another? So what do you think? A quarter for your thoughts? Maybe 2? Maybe 3? You're worth it. Blessed be.